All right, I have got some tricks up my sleeve. Um, this fly here is a fly that I don't know, it depends on how much you're into this, but this is Mike Lawson's floating nymph, and I think derivative of an old Swisher Richards pattern. But this is a fly that sort of set the world on its ear in its day. And there's sort of lots of new variations, or floating nymph patterns, fluff on there, that have come out in the years since. But this was the original, and this is a fly that works astonishingly well. What this is exactly what the name implies. It's a nymph floating up in the surface, and an emerger. And, I've often said that an emerger pattern, a fly pattern for an emerger, is but a snapshot of what should be a motion picture. And this would be the snapshot where the nymph gets right up to the surface and his wing case starts to burst and his wings start to unfurl. And that's what this little ball of dubbing up here on top represents, is those wings starting to come up. One of the cool things about this fly is you can goop this up with float and kind of work it into that dubbing. And this fly sits super low in the water. He's got a little surface area from the tails and the hackle fibers, but sits super low in the water, but it's still fairly easy to see. And fish do eat this thing, man. This is a good fly, and often overlooked or forgotten about. So here I am with my reminder. So I'm gonna twist one of these up for you. I'm going to tie it on a 100 SPBL. You could tie it on a regular 100, fairly light wire dry fly hook. As we've mentioned many times before, all I catch is big fish, so I like to have a little bit stouter hook. And I'm going to use, this is dark brown uni ADOT. It depends on the color bug that you're trying to match. And keep in mind, the body color is going to be the color of the nymph. Because this is a floating nymph, not an adult. So if you're tying a blueing olive, for instance, the nymph is brown. So I'm going to start that thread and just come back to about midpoint on the hook. And at that point, I want to take just the tiniest bit of dubbing, and I've got kind of a gold amber dubbing mix that I blended up here. This is Superfine. Just a tiny little layer of this and apply it to the thread. And I want to use that bare thread to work back to the bend of the hook, at which point I'm going to build just a little ball of dubbing, and then I can kind of distribute whatever's left of that dubbing over the hook up here. So I just want that little ball at the bend. You can see how tiny that is. Now I'm going to use a spade hackle feather. And a spade feather comes from the edges of a dry fly cape. Any good dry fly hackle will work, but the reason the spade feathers work so well is because they're long fibers. And this is it's either a barred dark ginger or it could even be a Cree. But it's got some speckling on it, and that's what I'm looking for here. I like the speckling. You can do this with regular plain blue dun hackle as well. But I'm going to use this speckled barred dark ginger, I think is what it is. This feather was on my desk, so I'm not sure which cape it came from. Well, as I look at it in the light, this may well be a Cree feather. So I'm going to take about a half a dozen of these spade fibers off of here, just like I do the tail on an Adams or any hackle fiber tail. And I'm going to measure these about a shank length long. Now I know the nymph's tail is not that long, but we're using this for function here. This is going to help support the bend of the hook. So I'm going to tie this in just in front, get my curve up here, just in front of that nub, and get them positioned in my hand just right. There we go. And then I'll wrap back over it. And as I do, I want to kind of split these fibers 3 to a side on either side of that nub. And you can see how I can use the thread torque to spread those out. I feel like I've got 3 on one side and 4 on the other. No, I got 3 and 3. I don't know why I'm trying to look at that with my eyeball. I'll just look at the screen here. So that's our little split tail, like old school split tail. And then I'm going to take a piece of extra fine copper wire. I'm going to tie this in up here about where I started my thread. And I'll wrap back over it to the bend. Just clip that back out of the way for the moment. Now I'll take some more of that same dubbing, and I'm going to put this on pretty thin again. You know, I like to keep these as skinny as I can. Nice thin layer with tight ends. And I'm going to start this dubbing just back here at the base of the tail. And I'm going to build a tapered body coming forward up to about the 80% point. Kind of work back and forth and finish off that taper. And keep in mind, that's a nymph body, so fairly skinny. Okay. Now I'll take my copper wire. I'm just going to evenly rib forward through that body. Add a little segmentation there, and then that fine wire you could just break off. So it'll make a thread base all the way up to the hook eye and back again right up to the front edge of the body. I want to be butted up close there. I've tweaked my hook a bit. And now we're going to put the legs in. So I'm going to take that same spade feather. I'm going to take a little clump of 3 or 4. And I like to do this in 2 separate batches. So I'm going to spin my thread up a little bit, and I'm going to catch these fibers sort of diagonal along the far side of the hook. And I want their tips to be about even with the bend. That bunch is just a little long. I'll wrap back over them right up to the front edge of the body. So you can see those little legs just extend just back to the bend of the hook, into the body. Then I'll grab 3 or 4 more, and I'll just repeat that same process on this near side. And you can kind of preen and pull those to get them aligned however you need to. You've got to kind of keep in mind that the idea of this bug, I like to spread them out a little bit, there we go. The idea of this bug is the adult is just starting to creep out, so these legs could be the legs of the nymph, or it could be the legs of the adult as it's starting to push its way out of the nymphal husk. So you see what we've got. You can see right here, if you do all kinds of things with the thorax here, you've got a pretty good looking little mayfly nymph as it sits right now. And with those spade fibers, those are stiffer, so that's going to help support. This is a dry fly meant to be fished up in the surface film, so those stiffer spade fibers will help with that. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to take some gray superfine dubbing and get a little wax on my fingers. And I'm going to take what seems like way too much dubbing. And I'm going to, if I hold this above the hook, let's do this up here. I want this clump of dubbing. You can see how the fibers are aligned left to right on the dubbing. I want those perpendicular to the thread. So this is very similar to the way I would build a ball head for a midge, like a brassy or a black beauty. I want that dubbing to kind of go crossways onto the thread. And fairly thick. You know, what seems like far too much dubbing. Let me get this up here. So a big fat strand of dubbing. Okay, and it's about 1.5 inches long or so. And I want to dub that down nice and tight. Now I'm going to take a turn and get my thread right up here on top of the legs. Now what I'm going to do is I've got that dubbing on there tight. I'm going to reel in my bobbin. So I'm going to start to reel in my thread, and I've got a steep angle here. So I know this is not showing on the screen, but it will in a minute. I'm going to reel in and let the bobbin slide this dubbing down, like so. So we just collapsed that loop of dubbing. Then I'm going to pinch it. Oh, I didn't get it very good there. Pinch it and feed out a little bit of thread and get a couple of turns around the hook. So we've just got that little ball, kind of a little knot on top. Now I can kind of position that and wrap back over it. Again, keeping my thread really short here to butt this up right up to the front edge of the body. And then I'll take another little pinch of this dubbing, and I'll finish off the thorax here. So this is the kind of gold amber dubbing that we were using for the abdomen. I like to hold on to that ball, and I'll build this taper from just behind the hook eye right up to the base of that ball and kind of wedge that dubbing in there to finish that off. So we've got that loop sitting up on top. I'll whip finish him just behind the eye here. I like him. Yeah, that's a good looking little lump of dubbing on top there. And you can see how the bottom of the fly is all brown. He's just got those wings just starting to unfurl. If you've ever been patient enough to sit on the riverbank, you can actually see bugs as they're emerging in the scum along the edges. And if you grab one and hold it in your hand with some water, he'll probably do it right in your hand. And you can see how their wings essentially come out of that wing case in a ball and then sort of pop through. And this is pretty much exactly what it looks like. It's just kind of a little knot of gray on top of the bug, and that floating nymph imitates that pretty darn good. Like I say, to fish this, take some floating and just grease the ball, and that'll sit up on the surface. And there you go. That's your floating nymph. Fun little bug, and hey, we're the only ones that know about it these days. Just you and me. So keep that a secret. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. That was kind of a nice, fun little blast from the past. Summertime. It's coming. Thanks for watching. I'm Charlie Craven.